Welcome, everyone. I'm Jordan Hegel with the ISU Alumni Association. Before we get started with today's presentation, I want to invite you all to put what city or state you're watching from in the chat box. And then we're going to pick one person at the end to win a special prize. We encourage you to use the chat box throughout today's presentation to ask your questions and leave comments. We will get to as many questions as we can during our time together. We would like to recognize our ISU Alumni Association members. Because of membership dues, we're able to offer free events such as this one. If you're not already a member, we invite you to join today at isualum.org/join. With that being said, I'm excited to introduce Mikaela Kate Schaefer. Mikaela is an Iowa State University graduate who owns her own professional training and coaching business based out of South Carolina. Today, Mikaela is here to share her expertise on company culture.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jordan. Great to be here with all you Iowa State alumni. I am in South Carolina, SEC country, as everybody always reminds me. So it feels extra good to spend this hour with a whole bunch of you, Iowa State. It's even good just to see the red and gold on the screen. So excited to be here, excited to dive in. If you want to go ahead and throw up the PowerPoint, we can dive right into the meat here. So how much is culture costing your bottom line? We're going to be talking about today. And so we're going to be tackling all your kind of people problems, people issues, maybe struggles you have with teams, with leaders, and then also just really how much is that affecting your bottom line? Maybe you already feel it. Maybe it's why you came today. But before we get into all that good stuff, I want to just hit the next slide, give you a little information about me. That's Mom and Dad Schaefer. Grew up in a small town, Latimer, Iowa, 300 people. We're all big Cyclone fans, and everybody, 2 older brothers, we all went to Iowa State. And if you hit that next slide, about 100 yards from our house, we have about 4,000 pigs. So I share this slide often with people in the South because they cannot fathom being around that many pigs so closely. But I always tell them, like many of you know, when the wind hits it just right, that's the smell of money. So if you hit that next slide, there we have some Iowa State greats, as you know, but again, I use this as a bit of football trivia for all those SEC people that think they know everything. If they can name these 2 players of Iowa State greats, then, I'll give them extra kudos. But I randomly ran into Bruce Hall years ago in the airport. He was kind enough to let me take his picture. And then about one of Brock's last games, we happened to sit by his family at Old Chicago, and he talked football a little bit with my nephew. So those were, great times of meeting some Iowa State greats. But so a little again about me, big Iowa State fan, obviously graduated Iowa State 2006. After that, if you hit that next slide, I spent 7 years in full-time ministry. 4 of those years were right there in Ames at Cornerstone Church. And then I spent a year in that other university town in Iowa, which we'll rename nameless. And then from there, I spent 2 years working at a church in Sheffield, England, overseas. And then from there, I moved to South Carolina, where I realized really what I love to do was what I was doing in the church was a lot of one-on-one coaching, training, discipleship, a lot of leadership development within those churches. And so quickly started to meet one-on-one with people, having my own business. And then people would come to me and they would say, hey, can you work with my boss, my team? We're having issues, and it's kind of grown from there. So now I get the privilege of doing trainings like this, basically working with teams, helping Joe and Sally basically play nice with each other is kind of how often it goes. So if you hit that next slide, and we'll kind of get into the meat of it here. But hopefully this doesn't describe your feelings in this day right now anyway. But, often this is how we can feel about our teams, our work. And if you hit that next slide, when we're talking about culture today, what I really want to grasp is, how do you feel when you show up to work on Monday morning? And what comes to mind when you hear the word culture? Because so often in leadership, we have these kind of big leadership terms, and we all think we're maybe thinking about the same thing or what we mean when we say culture. But just kind of put in the chat box, and for sure, any questions as we go throughout. I want to hit your questions today too. But what comes to mind when you hear the word culture? Is it leadership? Is it accountability? Just give me kind of all the things when you say what makes up a great team culture, what comes to your mind? So kind of have that go through the chat box. And as you're doing that, the kind of three things, if I could have you go back to your team and talk about just three things around culture, it would be this. If you don't listen to anything else, it would be this today. It would be, I often see culture makes up of a team's mindset, a team's behavior, and their experience. So often it's the mindset of how a team shows up, what they're thinking about work, what they're thinking about their team, the behaviors around that, and then ultimately the experience day in and day out that they have, or as you as the leader are going to give them. And so I see a lot of other great comments. It's interaction, it's communication, it's all those other things that we're going to be touching on today. So some great things to think about. I love that. Philosophy, practice, priority. Some great things we're going to be talking about as well today. So if you hit that next slide, really quickly, I just want to touch on and have you to be already thinking about what is culture already costing you. And so these are some quick Google stats on the not even millions of dollars that company culture is costing people or employee turnover. This is the billions of dollars. And if you hit that even next slide, again, we have more stats on billions of lost productivity all around a team's lack of efficiency, lack of effectiveness, lack of engagement. And so just kind of already be thinking about what is culture costing my team day in and day out? What are we losing in team connection? What are we losing in productivity? Maybe in employee turnover. Just kind of be having that go through your mind. So hit that next slide. So I'm going to be going through what I feel like personally, both from my own experience, from my years and years being with teams, leadership training, that I see over and over again are the 5, like you must have these, right? These are kind of the foundational pieces of every great team. And I'll just give you a hint. They have nothing to do with beanbags, pool tables, ping pong tables, although that's fun. And provides a great icing. If you don't have the potatoes and the meat, there's the gravy is just the gravy, and it just kind of doesn't taste great, right? If you don't have the meat of it. And so today we're going to really be tackling the meat. So the first one, if you hit that next slide, that they're the 5 C's, I call them. So the first C is compassion. And what I'm talking about when we talk about compassion is trust. The very first thing I talk about with any team I go into, I want to get a gauge of their level of trust with each other. Because every great team, every great relationship has to have a solid foundation of trust. And trust is one of those, again, leadership words that it's like it's a feeling, right? It's a feeling of I know when I trust someone, and I know when I don't trust someone. It's that gut sense. But again, we have to be able to get really specific about what is it that I don't trust about this person? What is it that can help me build and earn trust with the team, right? If you're a new leader, you have a team of 5 people or 50 people, you have to figure out what are the very specific tangibles I need to build trust with those people. So I break it down in the 5 C's of trust are care. You have to have a sense that they understand you and are for you. It's that emotional intelligence piece, that empathy, that kind of EQ that says, I have a real sense that you care about me, that you understand me, that you're for me. That next piece is capable. You have to trust that they are competent to do what you need them to do. This is kind of the obvious piece that, the resume says they can do ABC, they come to work, they can do ABC, right? There has to be around their skills, their abilities, that they're capable. The next piece is that character piece. I have to trust that you're someone that who you need them to be. So say it's a sales individual, you have to trust that they're someone of honesty, integrity, that when they're out on calls, when they're out traveling on the company card, that they're taking the clients out, right? They're not partying on that company card or whatever it might be, that the character piece is there in terms of their values, who you need them to be in that sense is how they're showing up. That next piece is connection, that there has to be a trust and alignment on the purpose, the vision, the priorities that you share together. I was having this conversation just even last week with two CFO, and I think it was the CFO and CEO, and they were like, we are missing each other. And I brought out these 5 C's, and they said it's connection. Because what was happening was they were having a conversation and like, okay, yep, we're on the same page, vision, purpose. Then they would leave the meeting and their priorities would be completely different. It was just that disconnect of not being able to trust each other, that we're aligned and connected on purpose, vision, and the execution of priorities. And then that last piece is consistency. So trust, I need to trust that what I've seen you do and how you show up, you're going to do it again and again and again. There's that track record. There's that consistency. And so I find when you don't have these 5, and even if you don't have one, there's a level of trust that is just maybe broken a little bit, and maybe not even broken. It's just not quite at the level that it can be for everything else to build on. So I want you to take a second and think about scale of 1 to 10. What is the level of trust you have with your team? Based maybe on these 5 C's, 1 to 10. You can, if you feel comfortable putting in the chat, if your coworker's not going to see it, 1 to 10, what is the level of trust? And then even specifically, is there an area within these 5 that you feel like could be improved upon? Or maybe is that missing piece of someone within your team? And I find this becomes so effective when you go to have a hard conversation with somebody, is that, if you go to somewhere, you're like, I don't trust you, right? That's not a helpful conversation. But a helpful conversation is, man, I feel like we're aligned when we're in conversations together, but then you go away and you prioritize the marketing piece, but we've, planned something else. So it becomes super helpful in having much more effective conversations. So that's the first C, is care, compassion, and trust. So kind of moving along here, and feel free to put in your questions around trust. We'll kind of keep it moving though. The next piece, the next C, is conflict. And I'm not saying go out and create conflict. I'm saying, as we all know, conflict will happen, like change, like taxes. I always say conflict is right next to it. We all know it's going to happen. And what I often see with teams, with leaders, is they're on this conflict continuum of, you often have teams that when conflict comes, there's maybe a lot of false harmony, right? A lot of yes men, yes woman. People maybe don't really want to rock the boat. And so there's a lot of what I find meetings after the meeting. So I usually know when I'm working with teams and there's meetings after the meetings, or people aren't saying what they need to say within the meetings, there's a lot of false harmony happening. And then on the other side of that, I find there's teams that live in kind of a destructive criticism, or maybe you have a kind of domineering leader. Nobody else can really say much. Maybe you have people that just don't like conflict, right? They're a bit avoidant. And so the first step always for every team is to just have an understanding and awareness on where are you at on this continuum and where's your growth opportunity. So if you hit that next slide, There's two key pieces I find that every team needs to have within conflict or around conflict. And that first piece is a personal self-awareness and a team awareness. And that personal self-awareness is around where do you go in conflict? Do you have a keen awareness on when conflict comes, when tension comes, this is what I normally default to, right? You have people on that maybe go to harmonizing. They're your people pleasers. They don't want to rock the boat. You have people that maybe any sort of like tension comes and they're like, avoid, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to see it. They kind of shut down. You have people maybe somewhere in the middle that just want everything to be okay. There's a lot of compromising maybe that's happening. And then, of course, you have people that are all about just the task and kind of miss the relationships. So step one is always, do you have the self-awareness piece around where do you go in conflict? What are kind of your triggers? What are the things that, kind of affect you? And then the next piece of that, I find teams that are able to have discussions around this together that Joe can say, oh yeah, when conflict comes, this is what I do. These are my kind of blind spots. This is what I notice. And when you can have that together as a team, it makes it a lot much easier when conflicts come for you to know each other's awareness pieces. So the next piece of that, before I play this kind of next video, it's not only the team and the personal awareness, but also around conflict is you have to have a structure around hard conversations. Because I'm sure many of us, we've had hard conversations and you're all emotionally charged, right? You're maybe passionate about what you're talking about. Maybe you're hurt a little bit. And so it's hard to then have a constructive, helpful, good, hard conversation. And so I find the teams that have a together set structure around how do we have hard conversations and what does that structure look like is just better for everybody. And so I'm going to share a video here. It's Simon Sinek, and he uses the approaches called Feelings, Behavior, Impact, or FBI. And I find this is one of the most helpful structures around conflict, hard conversations, confrontation that I've used with teams. Many of my teams use. And so quick video to kind of share, and then we'll kind of come back from there.
Number one, I think middle management is the most difficult but also the most important job in the world. And here's the reason. Because when you're in the front lines, it's mostly finite. Like, make the sale, get the plane out on time, beginning, middle, end, right? Mm-hmm. But you have to have the concept of infinite because you have to know that it's contributing to something bigger, and you have to know that it's not just about the sale, it's how you do the sale so that they'll come back again and tell their friends. So but as you move your way up the ranks, when you get to senior, it's mostly infinite with a little bit of finite because you have to know that the decisions you make have ripples. Middle management sucks because you have to balance both. Exactly. Right? And you learn to become a translator. And I think the solution that often works best is empathy and honesty. Right? So one of the things I would recommend is you're focusing on how do I help the people manage this influx of difficult, and they say we don't because he doesn't appreciate, and he never gives us the chance, and he never says yes, and all of this stuff. For you now to turn your attention to him, because as a good leader, you want to help him grow. And you said he's open-minded-ish, right?
Yeah,
so he's a good person, and we can just assume that maybe he's never had the leadership training that he needs. He's not a bad guy. He just kept getting promoted, right?
He's already tired of
No, that's normal. If you're good at your job, you get promoted. But you get promoted to do the job to lead others who do the job you used to do.
He's open to my advice, and he often thanks me. And I said, you rather thank Simon, but he's not open to your vision.
Well, that's okay. But make it your own. It doesn't have to be mine. He doesn't have to be mine. It doesn't matter whose name is on it. It's ridiculous. That's fine. Make it your own. But the point is I would learn the technique of effective confrontation, right? Shit, this is going to be more than 1 minute.
It's a 3-step, right? I read about it.
I'm going long.
No. I know what you mean.
Yeah. Okay.
What? It's a lousy thing. I need my mic back. Let's change.
I use the effective confrontation on my husband all the time. It works. It works perfectly. He doesn't know it.
Okay, that's manipulation. That's different. That's
Simon, before we get into
so
any
here.
chaos,
I'll tell you really quick what effective confrontation is. Effective confrontation always requires three things. We came up with an acronym for it, but I don't remember what the acronym is. But it requires three things, right? You have to be able to state how you feel. Oh, FBI. Feelings, behavior, impact, right? So you have to say specifically how you feel. You have to do better than happy, sad, angry, right? You have to say, and I'll tell you all about the other. You have to say specifically the behavior that they did that caused the feeling, and you have to say the impact if that behavior continues. You cannot make it generic. It has to be specific. Those three things can be in any order, but they all have to be there. We've gamed it out with 1 and 2, and it does not work. You have to have all three. The order doesn't matter. And it goes something like this. You cannot say, you're always late to meetings. You need to come to meetings on time, otherwise bad things will happen, right? Because you're making it generic. Because they'll say, I was at the meeting on time on Thursday, and you'd be like, yes, you were. But in general, and that's what ends up happening. It falls apart. So you have to write down the statement so you know it. You have to know it before you have to be prepared for this confrontation. So you would say something like, when you showed up to the meeting late on Thursday, even though it's all the time, you pick one. When you show up to the meeting late on Thursday, I feel very disconnected from you. And my concern is that you continue to show up late to meetings, that the disconnection will grow to the point where I'll stop trusting you. And then you shut up. So you would say to him, when you heard that idea, you can say, I'm completely confused, or I'm completely stuck. Because on Thursday in the meeting, you said you wanted this, and when our people gave us this, you rejected it. And my fear is, if you continue to do that, they will stop caring. And then you shut up. And then when he says, yeah, but they don't understand, da-da-da-da-da-da, you repeat the statement. And he says, yeah, but you, da-da-da-da-da-da, you repeat the statement. And believe it or not, that statement works extremely well to make them start taking accountability. So it's about managing up.
Awesome. So maybe you've seen that before, but again, specifically with this video, one thing that I see that happens so much around conflict is what gets communicated is your feelings. It hurt me. It hurts me and the team when you never show up on time, or you're late, or the project doesn't come in on time. So the feelings and the behavior often get communicated a lot and often. But what I feel, that impact piece often gets missed in these hard conversations, that someone can really feel the weight of understanding the consequences, the impact. And so that last piece I find is so crucial with teams. So I have a couple teams that this is the structure they use around having hard conversations. And so it's become normal for them then to, when the hard conversation is happening to them, they can get a sense of how that other person is feeling, the exact behavior that they're experiencing, and then as well the impact. So there's even kind of alignment around the hard conversation. And so much I could spend just an hour. I have spent hours with teams just around that first C, around trust, around care, because that so much creates a great, strong building block for being able to have hard conversations around conflict. And so if you're a team that your trust is there and it's growing and you're continuing to earn trust again and again, the next step I always find is to then have, because you have that trust, have those conversations around conflict. So think right now, kind of again, scale of 1 to 10, how would you say your level of conflict is in terms of like where you at on the continuum with your team? And then as well, where are you at and really truly knowing your personal kind of self-awareness around where you go in conflict, and where do you truly know where your team goes in conflict? Because often I find too, you think you know where you go in conflict, but when you start having the conversations, and Joe says to Sally, actually, Sally, it always kind of feels like you shut down when the tensions get high, and you can have some really good dialogue, hopefully, if that trust is there around that. And so often I see teams too, they dive into hard conversations, or they kind of try and dive into figuring out the conflict. And often what needs to happen first is to create a level of safety and trust to really be built to actually have those conversations. So keep the questions coming in. I want to, maybe after this next piece, we can do some questions. Any questions around trust, around conflict? And as the questions come in, I'll kind of go to the next one. The next C is communication. It's the one that I get asked probably more than any other topic to speak on. Talk about communication. We're terrible at communication, whatever it might be. And you can probably think of your own, but with most leadership words, communication is one of those words that it can mean a lot of things. It can mean communication around someone's personality. It can mean communication around the conflict issues, around meeting structure. But today specifically, what I want to talk about is meetings. And I recently shared this little graph or comic with someone, and they're like, actually, that's not funny because our meetings are awful. They were feeling the weight of this, what's meant to be a funny graphic. But I find so much, if you hit that next slide, just like Patrick Lencioni says, so much of your culture lives and dies by your meetings. Bad meetings are the birthplace of unhealthy organizations. Good meetings are the origin of cohesion, clarity, communication, higher morale, faster, better decisions, greater results. And my guess is you can feel it, right? You can feel it. I often, when I start working with teams, I ask if I can sit in on a couple meetings just as kind of like fly on the wall, observing. I just want to get a sense of, who's in the room, how these meetings are, because so much of your culture is within your meetings, so much of it. And so if you get your meetings right, because again, your meetings are probably happening right every day, every week. And again, like I said, with culture, it's your mindset, it's your behavior, and it's the experience you're creating for your people. And so as a leader, if you're getting your meetings right, you're probably getting a whole lot of your culture right as well, because it's where the mindset, the vision is shaped, the behaviors are shaped. You're creating that experience. And so with your meetings, I often say as well, if you're not excited to go to the meeting or have a meeting, like cancel the meeting, right? If you're not excited to be there, I can guarantee nobody else is excited to be there as well. So if you get your meetings right, you're well on your way, in my opinion, I see, to creating a culture that's really what you want it to be. So if you hit that next slide, one of my I kind of have a couple books that are like absolute must reads for every leader. Death by Meeting by Patrick Lencioni is absolutely one of those books. And he basically just says every meeting needs to have a purpose. It needs to have a structure. There needs to be a sense of intentionality. And so this is kind of his structure that he created. Because I often find with teams, it usually is either kind of feast or famine with meetings. They're either having way too many meetings, everybody's kind of exhausted, not even sure why they're going to certain meetings. And then the other is like, we're not having enough. So it is incredibly hard to find that sweet spot in, what is the right balance. But the three things, if you kind of want to do an evaluation with your team on meetings, I kind of say use the 3 E's. And that's, are they effective? Are they efficient? And is your team engaged? And for sure, I would do a feedback survey, because you might think they're effective, efficient, and engaging if you're leading them. but that maybe doesn't mean your team thinks so. And so those are always the key to evaluate, like are the right people in the room? And even just in general, am I meeting with the right people within this department, within this team? The when, are we meeting at the right times? Not enough, too often. And then of course the what, is there intentionality with what are we talking about? So efficiency, effectiveness, and are people engaged? So again, kind of do a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you at communication wise with your meetings? And with that, I'll kind of quick pause. Any kind of halfway point, questions, thoughts in the comments. Question coming in already. How do you help someone step into the conflict when they go to avoiding due to their traumatic past work experiences? That is a great question. Interesting. It's an interesting question because I'm literally have a one-on-one client right now that is this exact same situation. So she had a previous work environment that was very toxic, very domineering boss, was very, you got to do these things, don't ask for help, basically do it right all the time. She was in that environment for a solid 2 years. Thankfully now is with a team I'm working with, who I think is great, and just what I feel is a super healthy team, right? And the team is finding that she's not asking for help, that she's getting kind of flustered and stressful. And so she started working with me, and basically has said, I feel like it's PTSD. Like, I feel like even though they're awesome, even though this is a healthy environment, I can't help but be kind of triggered by this past experience. So what I'm doing with her is helping her identify what are her triggers, what are the things that, asking for help was one of those things. When things get busy, she notices is when she gets stressful. And so what I'm helping her do is, one, identify what are those triggers that used to be that old environment that are still kind of triggering her now. And then what are some helpful tools that she can basically reverse her behavior, her mindset, to know that she's in a safe place now. The team's not demanding anything more of her than she can give them. So a big thing too with that is being able to help them tackle their mindset, because like for her, a big part of that traumatic experience was feeling like she's never doing enough, feeling like I'm not good enough. And so you come into this new environment, and a lot of times, even though it's a safe environment, when it gets stressful, when it gets busy, all of a sudden she has that mindset of, oh, I'm not doing enough. I'm not, I just can't, whatever. And so it's helping her to slow down, recognize the triggers. Like one thing that she did was put a sticky note. She's a vet tech. So she, on her clipboard, she carries around everywhere. She puts a sticky note that says, breathe, count to 5 before she enters the exam room every time. So that's something she's been doing. Thankfully, she's in a healthy environment too, where there's some things her coworkers are helping her with. And then I could kind of go on and on about this one, but the last thing I'd say with that too is just if they can find a helpful, I'm a third party, but like a helpful third party that can help her process through it, whether it's a weekly basis, counselor, again, depending on how traumatic it was too, a licensed therapist, all the different things. But hopefully that's helpful. You can reach out to, I can send you some more good resources as well. All right, next question. How do you push back on coworkers who are often my way or the highway and actually collaborate? Whew, yes. Yeah, there's so much. I would say the first part that comes to mind right away is to be able to gauge their level of, I'm just going to say, toxicity, because there are some personalities that, yes, are very much like my way or the highway, and their kind of domineering approach is maybe just the only way they know. And I've seen before too, because they're so unapproachable, they've never been given that really hard feedback, and to be able to really accept it and work on themselves in that way. So there's kind of that piece. But the other piece of it I've seen is if you're dealing with a toxic leader, that's my way or the highway. And that becomes a whole different approach in terms of collaboration, what that looks like. Oftentimes when dealing with toxic leaders, there's just a whole new set of rules. I find that you have to deal in terms of working with them. Sometimes it can be even the opposite of what you would normally say within leadership. And so that first piece, I would identify, where are they at? Like, are they approachable? Do they take feedback? If they do take feedback, I would figure out who in their life has the greatest influence with them to give this feedback, and hopefully to be able to be a leader that can then adjust and see that this isn't effective, the my way or the highway approach. And unfortunately, a lot of times with these types of leaders is figuring out how to, if you're kind of like helpless in the situation, figure out how to lead within the team in spite of them, or around them, or kind of through them. I mean, that can be a tricky one. It kind of depends on the situation with that one, if that answers the question. But let me keep going through the slide to the next. We'll round out the next through and hopefully get a few more questions at the end. So we've touched on the first C is care. It's that trust. That next C is conflict, tools, structure around conflict. The next is communications and meetings. And then here we are, the fourth is what I call C, your contact. And so this is a beautiful, org chart. And it's amazing how often, and hopefully you have a beautiful org chart and it all makes sense and everybody's in the right position and who reports to who. But it's amazing how many times I'll go in, and especially if I'm observing and sitting in meetings, that I find the org chart that they maybe have sent me is not represented in reality. And specifically around maybe who reports to who, who's truly in power, who truly has authority, who can make decisions. And so this is a big piece that maybe to me often seems like an obvious piece, but the more and more I work with teams, the more I see there's such disconnect between what the org chart says and what reality is, as well as are the right people equipped with the power and authority to execute, to make decisions. If the boss is away, who has the next decision-making power? So again, the right people in the right seats with the right power and with the right authority. And the key of that, though, is that everyone else knows, because you may be a leader that you've given your maybe direct report power and authority to make a decision or hold someone else accountable, but the rest of the team doesn't know that. Again, it's kind of that communication piece. And so this can be a tricky one. But again, so kind of 1 to 10, scale your team on the org chart. I've seen as well secrecy around org chart, which to me is not a good, healthy organization. There should be clear expectations around who can do what, execution, decision-making power, who can hold who accountable, and just a lot of clarity around rules and positions. All right, so moving on to the last C here. Before we play this video, the last C is connection. And this is a just a quick 30-second Planet Fitness video that will make sense after we play it here. But go ahead and hit this video.
I just can't see myself at Planet Fitness. I mean, literally, there aren't enough mirrors. Because I need to be looking at me, 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 looking at you. To see if you're looking at me. Then that means you won't be seeing me there anytime soon.
Good, because we're Planet Fitness, a place for everyone else. Planet Fitness, the judgment-free zone.
Okay, so maybe I'm not an endorser of Planet Fitness, but maybe some of you have started there, your New Year's resolutions. But that video is for what I find that if you hit the next slide, the culture killers on your team. These are the people that it's all about me, all about I, just like in the video. Can't get enough of themselves. And so, I mean, it's funny, but a lot of times this is, I think what keeps me having a job is those culture killers on your team. And as we all know, it only takes one. It's that crab in the bucket, the negativity. And it's amazing how on teams, your gossipers or your culture killers, like they find each other somehow, right? And it's even just, I've seen it, one person on a team can just completely, disunify or kind of disconnect the whole team. And so if you can grab a hold of those people and influence them in a way that can change them is powerful. Otherwise, I find like you really have to set the expectations, set the consequences, and so they have as little effect as your team. If you need to get rid of them, HR compliance wise, then it's worth it. I could count so many times leaders that have told me, I wish I would have gotten rid of so-and-so sooner. I mean, and the level of appreciation the team has, and just the reconnectivity it gives the team. I mean, you know the ones you've maybe had on your team, hopefully none now, but those culture killers are just what they are. So if you hit that next slide, I had to get one dig into the Hawkeyes in one of my slides for sure. But this, we beat them here a few years back. I think that was at Kinnick, so even better. But one thing that combats that I feel like every team should have is that combats the culture killers especially is a scoreboard and a shared vision that says, are we winning or are we losing? And so sports, does a great job of this. We can all see on the scoreboard together, are we winning? Are we losing? And so often what I'll do with teams, I'll spend a whole day even with teams to identify what beyond the profit, beyond did we make money this year, what are the key measurables that we can all look at together, every department that says we're winning, we're losing. I work with a lot of manufacturing teams that out on the plant floor, they have the big whiteboard, right, that says, these are our numbers we got to hit for the day. At lunchtime, everybody can see, every department, every area can see, are we hitting it? Are we winning? Are we losing together? So that is always a huge connectivity piece. That last C is connection. Do we have key measurables together, every department that says clearly we can all see we're winning, we're losing together. And so a key kind of last piece. So again, kind of as you think about all of those, the first one was C, care, your foundation of trust. The next one was effective tools around conflict. The next one was communication. What do your meetings look like? Fourth is that contact, the hierarchy, the org structure. And then lastly, this connection piece. Do you have very key measurables on, are we winning together week in, week out, that piece? So if you kind of hit that last slide, that's the kind of nuts and bolts. I kind of went through that last part quick because I did want to see other questions you guys have, thoughts around this, around culture, around whatever it might be. Also, just to share, I'm about to be starting a 4-week kind of crash course around all things leadership training, covering these at kind of a deeper level. And so you can reach out to me. I'm giving a discount to Iowa State alumni members. If you, came on this webinar, I'd love to have you in there. Maybe you have a team member, just reach out to me. I'd love to have you. So any last, I know, got a little extra time for questions. There's more I could say too, for sure, but we'll see what we got. Let's see. What are your recommendations for reaching a compromise with coworkers on aligning with your team's long-term vision? Ooh, good one. Let's see. So I think the key there, I think you've already kind of said it even in your question, is alignment. That first step I find is alignment on a team's long-term vision. Like, are we together agreeing upon, and to really spend the time to debate, to discuss, are we aligned together on the 3, whatever the long-term is, right? The 5-year goal. And then from there, to be able to break it down to what are the priorities within that. And so often what I see in terms of, like, when you say recommendations, often I see that debate process and everyone really allowing their voice to be heard and why they feel like maybe the vision should be a certain, vision, or the priorities should be a certain way, is some really good, hard debate. And that's where trust comes in. That's where the ability to have debate around a topic and not let conflict get involved, where you have, personal opinions or personal agenda, but really keep it around the ideas, the priorities, and the task, and not maybe the politics around it is a hard piece. The other piece I've seen work really well is to invite a third party in, because a lot of times, again, everyone's passionate, they're coming to the table, you do have politics, maybe you can't avoid them. And so if you have 1 or 2 of a third party consultant that can kind of even just moderate it, that can be really helpful as well. And then sometimes it's hard. At the end of the day, who's ever in charge does just need to make the ultimate decision. But to be able to say, in terms of compromise, is there any sort of, buy-in you can have in this that can help you get behind it? I know you're not excited about it. I know you want plan B, but what would help you to have greater buy-in to this plan, to this purpose, right? You're always looking for opportunities to create ownership and buy-in for people to be heard within every department. But yeah, that's a great question. Other thoughts, questions? I'd love to hear too, of those C's, what everybody kind of struggles with the most, maybe, or biggest challenges. Let's see. How do you go about making changes or buy-in on changing how things are done? Ooh, good. That's a good one. That's hard, right? Because a lot probably depends on how big the change is. Is this a team that's been established for a long time? Is this a way of doing things in an industry that's been established for a long time? So a lot of times you're having to discern, how deep do the roots go in terms of how just like entrenched in it. It's why in sports you see when a team is losing, they get rid of the whole coaching staff, right? Because they need a whole set of values and mindsets of behavior to kind of create new level of buy-in. And so I think the first step is to identify how deep are they already entrenched in how things are done, and then to figure out who on the team also has the greatest amount of influence that can really affect change and really affect the team. Like, who are those really dynamic leaders that can help create the buy-in? And then always with buy-in, look for opportunities where people can feel heard, feel seen, and feel like their voice counts. Because a lot of times, even if you give people that space, they're going to be bought into whatever you're kind of proposing down the road, because you've given them that space to have their own voice, to feel like they're part of the process. So much of buy-in, of change, I find, is giving them a sense of ownership in the process. Anything that you can give them that makes them feel a part, makes them feel a decision-making power, you can give them that just makes them feel like, I'm part of this plan. Give them those opportunities. Hopefully that's helpful, if that makes sense. That's so funny. Adam Grant wrote a good book thing again that helped me. I literally have that on my nightstand right now, and so I couldn't remember if I'd already read it, but that's funny. I literally have Think Again on my nightstand, so that feels like a good confirmation, Kurt. I will dive right into that book. Really a lot of everything on Adam Grant. I love Simon Sinek's leadership stuff. Obviously, let's see, I just lost his name. But yeah, all the kind of, there's so much of what I talk about is all the great gurus out there have said before me. It's I'm not reinventing anything you guys haven't heard or probably read out there, because the key leadership, foundations remain the same again and again and again, no matter what relationship you're in. Go from there. So Danielle says, if you are struggling with all 5 of the C's, where's the best place to start? Great question. Best place to start. So I would say it kind of depends on where you're at in terms of leadership. Like, if you're a leader on a team, if you're leading a team. But again, I would probably go straight to trust. First, that the place I always start with every leader is the self-awareness piece. Evaluating your own level of self-awareness of, where do I need to grow in these trust areas? Am I someone that shows compassion? You said new to leading a team. Yeah, I would say that would be a great place, Danielle, to start, would be for you to go through these 5 C's of trust to identify, am I a leader that is, because trust is earned, am I a leader that's earning trust with my team? Am I showing I care about them? Am I showing that I'm consistent for who they need me to be? So if you build trust with your team in all the different ways you can, to me, that's foundational way to start. And just to be a servant leader would be a great next place. To be a leader that, hey, I'm here for you, I'm here to help you, I'm here to serve you, is just going to put that trust there right off the bat. And then just dive into some great resources already out there. Read books, read podcasts, or listen to podcasts, and go from there. So I know we're getting close to time. Any last thoughts, questions? Anyone from our Jordan? Any other? Yeah.
Not for me. Well, thank you, Mikaela, so much for taking the time out of your day to share your presentation and your expertise with us. I also want to just thank everybody for attending. Matt, do you want to jump on and choose our lucky winner for this little virtual event?
Let's do it. Thank you for everyone for participating in the chat. We had some great questions and comments. And if you did comment in our YouTube chat, you are going to be entered into this drawing that we're going to run right now. So you'll probably see some of your names and faces pop up, but the winner is going to receive an ISU prize pack. Then we'll be in contact with you. Corey, congratulations. Jordan's going to be in touch with you about receiving your prize. So congratulations, Corey.
Awesome. Right. Thank you all so much. And I hope.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Matt, continue, please.
I would say, Mikaela, thank you so much for being here with us. And all the way out on the East Coast. I know we're in a different time zone from you, but I'm glad you're staying connected with Cyclones everywhere. So we really appreciate it.
It's a little rough. Like tonight, the game starts at 8 o'clock. So the East Coast time is a little rough tuning into Cyclone basketball, but don't worry. I stay up late. Don't worry. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, we know we have Cyclones everywhere. So I'm sure you've got some Cyclones around you. You can maybe go to a club game watch or something like that. So really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you, everyone.
Right. Thank you. And congrats, Corey, as well. We also want to remind all of you that we have another event coming up starting next Monday, March 4th through 8th is our Celebrate State Week, formerly State Day. We've incorporated this into an email format now. So all you have to do is go to our website, isualum.org, and you can register for our State Week. You're going to receive a new email each day throughout the week that's going to contain a video highlighting our great campus, merchandise deals, membership deals as well. And we just have a quick video that we'll show you that kind of gives you a glimpse of what you'll expect. Okay, so maybe a little tease there about what you'll expect with some of those videos coming up. Again, if you want to register for that event, isualum.org is the place. Jordan, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you all for coming, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.